Hi everyone, my name is Nick, and today we're going to go over 6 excellent options for climbing houseplants. Whenever you stop in your local houseplant store, there's always going to be a selection of hanging basket plants, which are sold with the intent of trailing and cascading, but many of these plants can actually be grown upwards, given that they have a support to climb on, whether that be a trellis or a moss pole or even just a stick. So there are a lot of excellent options out there, but I just wanted to hone in on 6 great ones today. And the first one I actually want to talk about is behind me right here. So it's this plant that is always behind me in my videos that has grown up this trellis and has actually completely outgrown the trellis at this point, so we're going to have to take some steps now. But this is a Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, which is commonly referred to as the mini Monstera, although it's not actually a Monstera. It is very, very closely related though. But you can see, or maybe you can't see because I actually don't have a small one to hold in front of me today because it's all growing up here. But it's a very vigorous climbing houseplant. I have 2 of them at the base of this trellis. They both were purchased in 6-inch pots, I believe. And it has only taken, I'd say, about a year, if not less than that. I don't know exactly how long I've had this trellis here, but they were around here, I would say, when I just set up the trellis, whenever that was. And like I said, they have completely outgrown the trellis at this point. And that could be due to the help of my Soltech Solutions aspect light, which is what is shining this very bright light behind me, which supplies all of this artificial light for all of these houseplants that grow in my filming corner here. And I will leave a discount code in my description below if you're interested in getting one for yourself, because I really do highly recommend them and I can get you a little discount. But this plant has really taken to this space. It's completely artificial light. The closest window is at least 12 feet away, so it's pretty far from any natural lighting, so it's growing completely under this artificial light, and that's really taken to that. This plant is very, very easygoing. It really doesn't require that much attention. Like I said, it's just receiving artificial light, but watering, I can't even tell you like my routine with this plant. It's just one that I kind of water if I realize it's been a little too long, and these leaves will kind of wilt a little bit. They'll kind of curl in on themselves, and it's very vocal with you when it is time to water. So that's something I really appreciate about this plant. And I definitely have to dust it pretty often because there is just so much foliage going on, and it does take up the whole wall here, so it really does accumulate dust. So one thing I've noticed about this plant in particular that I really do need to pay more mind to it when it comes to dusting my plants in particular, but this is such an excellent climbing houseplant, so I really did want to talk about it first off today. And very, very closely related is this lovely plant right here. This is a Monstera Adensoni. So as I said, that this common name for this plant is usually mini Monstera or Monstera minima, depending on whoever is calling it its name. It's called that because it looks very similar to a Monstera deliciosa. This, however, is a Monstera Adensoni. But I do want to say, kind of backpedal for a second, that all of the plants I'm talking about today are specific species within the genus. So this is Monstera Adensoni. But all Monsteras are going to be considered climbing plants, all that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's a few exceptions with all of the plants I'm talking about today, but all of the plants I'm talking about, if you're into Monstera Adensoni or if you're into Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, you should check out what other Rhaphidophoras or what other Monsteras are out there, because if you like one, you're gonna like them all, I can promise you that. But this is called Monstera Adensoni, or they commonly call it Swiss cheese vine. As you can see, it is this vining houseplant that is full of holes, so it looks like Swiss cheese. Now this particular one I do have kind of just growing the way I have it, just cascading out of the front of the pot here, but I do have another one in my home that is a little too big and attached to other things in my home, so I wasn't able to pull it out for this video. That's actually growing up a moss pole. At this point, I think it's on a 4-foot moss pole. It's completely outgrown it off the top. And one of the benefits of growing plants like these on moss poles is that's how they want to grow in the wild, or a trellis. It's all good, I would say, but they really want to grow up a surface, and that allows the leaves to get much larger. So I actually grow the narrow form of Monstera Adensoni on the moss pole. This one, for example, is the wide form, so the leaves are a little bit larger to begin with. But my narrow form's leaves at the top of the moss pole and past and beyond have gotten so much larger than any of the leaves that are on this plant here. So it's really shown me that it's really happy, and that's how it wants to grow. So if you're struggling with growing Monstera Adensoni, let's say, or other trailing houseplants, and they're just getting to a point where the leaves are just getting so small on the vine, it's probably because that's not really how it wants to grow. It really does want to climb up something. And my plant here can be found skipping a few nodes here and there because it really does probably want something to grab onto, as you can see. So down the line, maybe I'll consider giving this something to climb on, but for the way I have it growing in my home right now, just have it spilling out the front of the pot. But I can say from experience that growing Monstera Adensoni on a moss pole is a very, very good thing. And let's move off of aroids for a second. So aroids are a large group of plants. Many of them are known for climbing, which includes Rhaphidophora, Monstera, and many other plants that we'll talk about a little later on. But we're going to take a little break for a second and talk about this Hoya right here. So Hoyas are very often sold as hanging basket plants. I'm normally seeing them, or at least they're sold to me most often, at least the very cool Hoyas that I get in stock, are usually sold in hanging baskets. And that's because these vines and tendrils just kind of get all over the place. And I do want to say, first off, this is a Hoya pubicalyx, but this is not the plant I wanted to share today. I really wanted to share with you guys my Hoya Australis because it has completely taken over its bamboo teepee I've created for it, and I went to go pull it off for today's video, and I found that it has grown itself and attached onto other hanging plants in the vicinity, so I just figured it'd be best to leave it be. So I have this a little less seasoned Hoya right here that's just beginning to do some climbing around its little bamboo hoop that I have here. But I would say if you get a Hoya and you find it has a lot of long vines and you want to try maybe displaying it on your table instead of as a hanging plant or on your windowsill, probably a better idea, this is one that you should try getting a bamboo stick, or like I made a bamboo teepee out of 3 bamboo sticks for my Hoya Australis. This is a bamboo hoop that I had purchased, but really anything that it can wrap around. So I would go with something that's rounder rather than a squared trellis. It would do better, I would say, with something rounder. Even wire. Wire would do fantastic. I'm sure you can make a very quick and easy trellis out of some stiff wire that you have around the house. And this really will just climb. I mean, this one obviously still has to get going, but my other ones, I should have pulled a different one out. I feel like I have a few other better examples, but these will just go around and climb on and grab on and just really take to these sticks that you give them. I'm rather surprised. If you are looking to step away from growing your Hoyas as a trailing houseplant, I would say try getting a bamboo stick or a bamboo hoop or making something for it to wrap around, because I think you're going to really like the way it looks. I am quite obsessed with it myself. So Hoyas are very easy and they're fun to collect, and they're great plants for someone like me who really doesn't helicopter parent my plants. I'm very hands-off, and I usually just like to water my plants when I feel confident that they are pretty dry and ready for watering. Another plant right here that I want to share with you guys, this is a Cissus. And this one right here, I will actually want to say that there are so many different types of Cissus. Like, there's ones that have more succulent foliage, there's ones that are more succulent stems, there's ones that are much more leafy and not succulent at all. But this one right here is one that has more succulent leaves. And I would say this is probably the only one I have available of all the Cissus I have in my home to share with you guys today, because this is the only one that has not grabbed onto another plant or just something in its vicinity and has made it unable for me to pull it out and share in my videos, which is a problem that I am finding lately. Some of my plants are just getting so overgrown and just latching onto things and the walls, and I just can't pull them off to show in my videos anymore. Rhaphidophora is a great example, and my Hoya Australis is a great example, and every single other Cissus that I would have rather shared than this Cissus in a broken pot today, but we're gonna make do with what we have. So Cissus are extremely fun climbing houseplants, and I said that they have so many different structures to them, which is why I think they're so fun. So as I was saying, there's some Cissus that I grow in my home that really aren't grown for their foliage whatsoever and defoliate on me all the time, but are more so grown for their thicker, very thick stems, which I think is very fun. So Cissus quadrangularis is a great example of that. And there's other Cissus that are much more leafy and grown for their foliage and have much more of a like boho vibe, like Cissus rhombifolia, which is the one I probably would have liked to share with you guys in this video today. But there are so many different types of Cissus out there. Many of them, I would say, are more on the succulent side, but I'm a little bit more into the leafy ones, but this one's kind of in between right here. So this is the Cissus rotundifolia, And I just am obsessed with the round leaves. They have these kind of serrated edges, and it's a lot different than many of the other cissus I grow in my home. So this one just kind of stands out to me for that reason. But it really does grow in the same way. I have another one of these in my home that's hanging up that really just grows like my leafy cissus and sends out little tendrils to grab on to other things in its area. It's really quite phenomenal how this plant really just makes itself at home in your home. So it's quite endearing, actually. But my cissus that I grow, they all prefer bright light, so I do grow all of the cissus, whether it be a leafy one or a succulent one, in a bright window. So I have west and southern facing windows in my home, so that does very well for me. And the leafy ones, of course, I water much more often. I water them when they're dry, but the more succulent ones, I definitely let them go and treat them a little bit more like a succulent, so I'd say I water them every 10 to 14 days and make sure that I give them a much more well-draining mixture than my leafy cissus. But there are just so many cissus out there, and it's definitely a plant you don't hear about. It's not popular whatsoever. So if you're looking for some fun climbing houseplants, I would say go out there and try out a cissus, whether you're into the succulent ones or the leafy ones. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Alrighty, so this right here, we're going to move back into aroids. So as I was saying, it's a group of plants. So there was Rhaphidophora, Monstera, there's philodendrons, and there's also Syngoniums. So this is a Syngonium macrophyllum right here. This is a little bit different than your standard Syngonium, which I think is commonly referred to as arrowhead vine, or sometimes commonly called Nephitis, which makes no sense to me because that is a very out there word. It sounds more like Latin than a common name. We're getting off topic. So this is a Syngonium macrophyllum, and this is just a fun climbing houseplant. As you can see, I really should be giving this plant a moss pole, but for now it's just hanging out on this bamboo stick that I've used some Velcro tie that I've just purchased on Amazon to keep it upright. And that's an excellent way to just deal with your climbing houseplants for the time being. Just get an inexpensive bamboo stick and just tie it with whatever you have that's not going to constrain the plant. So that's why I like using the Velcro tie, because it's very light on the plant's stem and not going to strangle it. But this right here is just a plant that I would say is normally not sold even in a hanging basket. It's usually sold in just 4 or 6 inch pots. This is, I mean, this, not this one in particular, but the standard Syngonium podophyllum, I would like almost consider it like a plant that everybody's grandmother has. You know what I mean? It's just something that it's just on, or your parents have it on the kitchen counter. It's just something that, you know, somebody, one of your relatives purchased at the grocery store sometime and they just have it sitting on their counter. And you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be a really like climbing or trailing houseplant, but once those things get going, they really do get some nice legs to them, let me tell you. So it's a really excellent option for growing upright, and one that's a little bit more unexpected, I would say. Syngoniums are just ones that I don't think would be really considered climbing houseplants, but they are most definitely a viable option. And the last one I want to talk about today, I would say, is probably the one that is the most no-brainer, and that is Pothos, or Epipremnum, which is another aroid. So just to recap, aroids include Rhaphidophora, Monstera, Philodendron, Epipremnum, and Syngoniums, and there are so many others that maybe aren't climbing plants, such as Aglaonema and Spathiphyllum, Dieffenbachia, but these are all in the same family of plants, and if you can grow one of these types of plants, I would say that you can grow all of them. So that's very exciting, to me at least. But this one right here is an Epipremnum pinnatum Cebu Blue. So this is the Cebu Blue Pothos, and this is just one of the ones I have in my home that I've actually attached to a moss pole within the last year or two, and it's done really well for me. And something I do want to say is if you're doing your moss poles, when you're first setting them up, you want your plants to grow straight up it. So you don't want to wrap your plant around the moss pole, you want it to just go straight up. But pothos are incredibly easy plants to grow. I'd say they're one of the top 5 plants I recommend to beginner gardeners in the plant store where I work, so I definitely have to point them out to you guys today. And they are almost always sold as a hanging basket plant with their trails starting to creep over the edges of the pot. If they're not already trailing for days, sometimes they get some really nice looking plants in at the shop, but those plants can be very easily turned into a climbing plant if you just get a trellis or a moss pole or a stick or something for it to climb up. And I have another pothos in my home, just a standard Epipremnum aureum, or the golden pothos, that I have climbing up a trellis in my home, and I just love the way it looks. It just stands out over the white trellis, and it looks fantastic with its green and yellow leaves. So an incredibly easy plant. I water it when I remember to water it. Same goes for this guy. Very, very easygoing plants, and these are ones that if you let them grow up enough, they will get some different shaping or ontogeny to their leaves, where they actually will get some holes in their leaves. These ones are known for getting holes in their leaves, same with the golden pothos, but more so they're just going to get larger leaves, which is what I think we're all looking to get, is some larger leaves on our plants. But I wouldn't be mad if these get some splits in their leaves either. I think it's actually quite wonderful. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's video, talking about 6 excellent options for climbing houseplants. So if you're getting a little tired of trailing houseplants, or if you're tired of putting holes in your ceilings and you're trying to find another option, I would say grow some of your trailing houseplants upwards, because it's a whole new world out there. So thank you guys so much for joining me. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at Philly Foliage, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.